There is a silence in the deep woods that is not peaceful, but hungry. Travelers speak of a particular grove where the birds do not sing, but rather whisper, where the wind dies against the stones of an ancient, hollow ruin. It is said that in this place, beauty is not admired, but captured. And those who wander too close do not simply lose their way, they lose their very selves. Deep within these sunless thickets lay a fortress of old, gray stone. It did not loom high like the towers of kings but crouched low against the earth, hidden by twisting ivy and the tangled limbs of dead oaks. Its mistress was a creature as old as the roots beneath the castle. To the eye, she appeared as a crone, withered and yellowed like parchment. But by day, she was a shapeshifter, prowling the ramparts as a feral cat or gliding through the canopy as a screech owl. Her magic was born of envy. She could not create, and so she stole. The air around her walls was thick with a heavy enchantment. Any creature, deer, wolf, or man, that stepped within the circle of her power found their limbs turned to lead. They would stand frozen, statues of flesh and bone, until she chose to release them. But for young women, the fate was far more permanent. If a maiden stepped into the circle, the witch would strip away her human form. In a blink, the girl would vanish, replaced by a nightingale. The witch would snatch the trembling bird, carry it into a windowless chamber, and lock it inside a wicker cage. It was said there were 7,000 cages in that room, 7,000 stolen songs, crying out in the dark. In a valley not far from these woods lived Jorinda and Joringel. They were bound not just by a promise of marriage, but by a connection of the soul. They were rarely seen apart. One evening, they went walking. They knew the legends of the Grey Tower, just as they knew to avoid deep water or steep cliffs. But on this day, the forest seemed to conspire against them. The sun slipped behind the mountains faster than the season allowed, painting the sky in bruised shades of purple and charcoal. A strange melancholy fell over Jorinda. She sat beneath an old birch tree, her heart heavy with a grief she could not name. "The sun is dying," she whispered, her voice trembling. Joringel looked up, intending to comfort her, but the words died in his throat. Through the dense brush, he saw the moss-covered stones of the wall. They were already inside the circle. Before he could pull her to safety, Jorinda began to sing, a high, broken melody that sounded nothing like her own voice. As the last note left her lips, she was gone. Where she had sat, a nightingale now fluttered, beating its wings against the heavy air. A shadow detached itself from the trees, a great owl with eyes like burning sulfur. It circled the bird 3 times, screeching a curse into the twilight. Joringel tried to run, to scream, to fight. But he was stone. He could not lift a finger. He could not blink. He was forced to watch as the owl transformed into the bent old woman. She caught the nightingale effortlessly, ignoring Joringel as if he were a stump of wood, and carried his love into the darkness of the ruin. Hours passed. Only when the moon was high and cold did the witch return. She muttered a release spell, and Joringel fell to his knees, gasping for breath. He wept at her feet, offering his life in exchange for Jorinda's freedom. The witch only laughed, a dry, rattling sound. "She will never sing for you again," she said. And then she was gone. Joringel did not return home. He could not bear the cheerful noises of the village while Jorinda sat in a cage. He lived as a shepherd in a distant hamlet, wandering the perimeter of the witch's woods, staring at the gray walls until his eyes burned. Seasons turned. Hope began to thin like mist. But one night, exhausted by grief, Joringel fell into a sleep deeper than any before. He dreamed of a flower. It was not a flower of this world. Its petals were the color of blood, glowing with an inner heat. In its center lay a single dewdrop, large and lustrous as the finest pearl. In the dream, he knew with absolute certainty that this bloom was the key, that it could break what iron and steel could not. He awoke with the image seared into his mind. He began to search. For 9 days, he scoured the valleys and the high ridges. He searched until his hands were raw and his spirit nearly broken. On the morning of the 9th day, in a cleft of rock where the sun barely reached, he found it. The blood-red flower stood alone. The pearl at its center shimmered with a light that did not waver. Flower in hand, Joringel marched back to the castle. As he approached the perimeter, he braced himself for the paralysis, the weight of the leaden spell. But it never came. The magic of the flower parted the curse like smoke. He walked through the iron gates. He crossed the overgrown courtyard. The castle was silent, save for the faint, collective rustle of thousands of wings. He followed the sound to a great hall deep within the keep. The sight stopped him cold. The room was lined from floor to ceiling with wicker cages. 7,000 birds. 7,000 lost lives. In the center of the room, the witch was pacing, feeding the prisoners. When she saw Joringel, she did not laugh. She shrieked, a sound of pure malice, and lunged at him, her fingers curling into claws. But she could not touch him. 2 yards away, she hit an invisible wall radiating from the flower. Her dark magic withered in the presence of the crimson bloom. Joringel scanned the cages. Panic rose in his chest. They all looked the same. How could he find her? Then, he saw the witch's eyes dart toward a single, modest cage near the door. She was trying to protect it, trying to hide it. Joringel rushed past her. He touched the cage with the red flower. The wicker burst apart, and there stood Jorinda, as beautiful as the day she was taken, her arms reaching for him. He did not stop there. He swept the flower across the room, touching cage after cage, wall after wall. The witch collapsed, her power dissolving into dust. Around them, the air filled with the beating of wings and the weeping of maidens restored to form. The castle did not crumble, but its darkness was broken. Joringel and Jorinda walked out of the gray ruins hand in hand, stepping into a forest that was finally, truly